Good afternoon. Psalm 1:3 says this: He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that bring forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he does shall prosper. Now, one of the things about this particular scripture, this is Psalm 1, verse number 3. We started at verse number 1 and 2 last week, but just looking at this, one of the fields that I'm really most interested in is robotics. I have lots of conversations with people about where we're going in terms of robotics. We can cut our grass right now with a robot. We can, we've had Roombas in our homes for a long time. So we are able to, without, we have robots in so many areas of our lives right now. But, when you look at robotics, one of the great goals of robotics is not just to engineer things that will make our lives easier, that will just make it better for us, so as that they kind of cut down on our work. But one of the great ideals of robotics is really to imitate the human frame, to really imitate the human body. When you look at those other robots, they're great for what they do. But when you look at the humanoid robots, they're still very clunky. The walking is not quite right. The hands and the arms and the reaching is not quite right, because the intricacy of a really, when you look at the intricacy of the human body, it is absolutely amazing. When you reach out and touch something, the number of muscles and the number of synapses and the electrical pulses that are required, the quick movement from the electricity from the brain that sends signals to the arm and to the muscles to do exactly what they do, to grasp. All of those things are so intricate. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, and we have not been able to, as a human race, been able to duplicate that. We've not been able to duplicate the human walk. We've not been able to duplicate the human grasp, the true pointing of a finger, or the lifting of 2 or 3 digits independently. We've not been able to do that. So when you look at biology, and you look at chemistry, and you look at psychology that is connected to humanity, it is just really, really intricate. It is really, really complicated. So when you look at that, when you understand comparing a man, or using a simile, comparing this wonderful creation of God, you're not going to expect that God is going to use a tree. But when you look at this, he compares the righteous man to a tree planted by the rivers of waters. Now, when you look at that, it's really, really interesting, because he doesn't compare it to something that has its own movement, something that has its own direction. It's a tree, and this tree is planted. It's not vulnerable. The tree is not in any danger. It is absolutely protected in its stable place. But it's not just stationary. It's not the fact that it's stationary, but the fact that it's placed where it is by the Creator, that there's no mistakes in the kingdom. There's no mistakes in its environment. One of the great things that happens with us is that we understand that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. So that means that where you are right now, there are absolutely no mistakes. You look at yourself, and if you're in America, no matter what's going on, you are in the place that God has planted you. You don't get to choose that place, because this is the place where the Creator has decided that you're going to be. The time that you were born, the place that you were born, the people that were around you, the people that you've met, the people that you're going to meet, all have been a part of the great tapestry of forming who you are. And this tree never attempts to move. It never seeks its own environment. It never tries to determine what is the right environment for it. It accepts the place that God has put it, because it is dependent. When you begin to look at the righteous man, it's not just about good deeds. It's not just about niceness, but the righteous man is dependent on God. This righteous man is not the fact that we're all dependent on God for breath. We're all dependent on God for rain. If God doesn't do it, we can't create it on our own. We can't make ourselves breathe. We can't make ourselves live. It's through him that we have our being. We recognize that. But I'm talking about this dependent on God is about a dependence on God for our identity. Dependence on God for who we are. We get our identity. We know who we are based upon what God has said. This tree is a tree, not because someone has named it a tree. The tree is not a tree because it's decided it's a tree. The tree is a tree with all the things that make it a tree, because the Creator has created it just that way. The Creator has named it. The Creator has placed it The creator has created the environment that that tree is in. So the identity comes from God. The placement comes from God. And its sustainability comes from God. This is not a detriment, but this is wisdom, because the creator knows exactly where this tree needs to be. Listen, some of us we're looking around and we're thinking, I need a change of environment. I need to get out of here because that's my real problem. And we sometimes look and we see droughts, we see famine, we see problems, and we assume, God, this is not where you want me to be. But this tree is planted here before any drought or famine ever comes. Before drought and famine is created, this is the blueprint, the mind of God. Where you are, who you are, and what you are is the blueprint of God. Though you may appear to be a vessel without honor, God says, listen, cannot I make one vessel with honor and another with dishonor? Listen, that vessel that looks like it's dishonorable is created by God. And God says, listen, I know this is a teapot and it doesn't have a latch on it. This is a teapot that doesn't have a top on it, but I created this teapot without those things because of the environment and the time and the place and the mission that teapot is going to be on. A tree has a continual source of water right by this river. But the thing about the river that is planted by is that there is seen and unseen sustaining power. There's seen and unseen water. There's water on the surface that you can see, that is there. And as long as it's there, there's comfort. That we look at the water, that's going to be what we drink. But when drought comes, when heat comes, when we look at that source and it starts to get dry, that's where we start to freak out, because we assume that our sustaining power comes from what we see. As long as the reservoir that we see is filled, as long as it has water that we can touch, that we can taste, we know that we are going to be okay. But if we ever get out there and look at that river and that river starts to dry up, that's sometimes when people who forget that they're planted by this river are not planted by this river by a God who does not know the time of famine, does not know the time of the river drying up, does not know the ebb and flow of that very river. But when that river dries up, we have to remember that we have been planted. And that planting is that we have an unseen reservoir to tap into. We're not sitting by the water. We're planted by this very river of water. We're planted there. That means that there is a system that undergirds us that people cannot see, that we often cannot see. You see this huge oak tree. You see these wonderful branches. You see the fruit that comes off. But what you forget, what you cannot see, is the root system. And the root system underneath has an uncanny ability to dip into the reservoir of water that is underground. While everything else is just drowning, the tree is drinking, but it doesn't look like it's drinking. The tree is being sustained. It's going to be here for a long period of time simply because of its root system, because of what's underneath it, what sustains it and girds it and holds it in place. This tree that is planted by the river has a rooting system that holds it in place. Famine does not mean to run. The fact that there's lack does not mean that we turn around. The fact that people don't like us does not mean that it's all over. No, we're planted right here in the midst of opposition, in the midst of seasons, in the midst of storms. We're planted right where we are. It's not an accident. And we have roots to get what we need when people try to take what we need and assume that we're going to simply go down because they have tapped out the sources that they see. They've messed up the things that they see, not knowing that your survivability is not based on the things that they can see. And your survivability is not based on the things that man can touch. Listen, God is just too wise to put your hope and to put your sustainability in men. The fact that men can see it ought to tell you something. That's not all there is. If men can take it, I can tell you something. That's not all there is. Whatever God has for you, man, if he takes one, God has 10 more in store for you. But you got to understand that your roots, it is what you believe, it's who you are that will sustain you in these tough times. It's your knowledge that all I've got to do is dig. I've got to go deeper than I am right now. It is the shallow stuff that will keep you thirsty. It's the shallow thinking that will keep you wanting. But when you understand that the life of a tree that God has compared us to is a life of continual digging, even when people don't see it. We're continually searching. We know that day is coming. We know there's trouble coming. And what will hold us is not the things that people see, our personalities, our facades, our the niceness that we have, our past, what people think they know about us. Those are not the things that sustain us. It's the roots. The thing that keeps us from leaving is the roots. The thing that keeps us standing are the roots. The thing that makes us stay a tree when we might want to be something else, the thing that keeps our identity intact are the roots. It's the unseen places in us that gird us. Listen, how many times have you been in a position where you said, I don't know what made me stay. I don't know what kept me in that situation. I don't know how I was able to maintain it. It's the roots. It's the things that are under you. The spirit man, the Holy Ghost. Those things that undergird you are things that people cannot see. They have no idea of the power that works on the inside of you. They have no idea of the transformed mind and what the transformed mind can conceive. That things about God, that he can do exceeding and abundantly above anything you could ask or think. So you no longer depend on your mind for prayer. You're not depending on what you can think, what you can conceive of for, that will limit what God could actually do. He will exceed your expectations. You serve a God who's able to bring water where there is no water. You serve a God who's able to open up a Red Sea and make a way in the desert for you if need be. The life of a righteous man is not marked by need and struggle. We get that twisted all the time. Listen, this is a tough life. It's going to be struggle. No, let me tell you what the mark of a righteous man is. Struggle and afflictions are a part of this world. Many are the afflictions of the righteous. We know that that's a mark that righteous people are going through all over the world. So if there's some needs, if there's some struggles, join the club. But that's not what marks our life. That's not what determines our life. When people see the believer, they're not seeing, oh, poor you. They're not seeing, look at you going through again. They're not meant to see your problem. That's not what God is showing off. When your things are on Front Street, when people see what you're going through, God is not showing off your issue. He's not showing off your problem. What he wants to show off is your strength and stability in the midst of issues and problems. And as a matter of fact, here's what happens. In a season that oftentimes is a season that you do not determine, a season that you don't know, you will bring forth fruit in your season. Nothing stops you. This is a promise. That tree is promised to bring forth fruit. No matter what's going on, you got to understand that God has promised that you're going to be a prosperous tree, that you are not going to be barren, that you're going to have fruit. There's going to be production in your life. He's promised it. This righteous man is planted for the purpose of bringing forth fruit, but he must recognize it is in its season. Every season that you're in is not fruiting time. There's a time and a season for everything under the sun. There are definitely times of joy. There's going to be times of isolation. There's going to be times where you're going to be ostracized. There's going to be times of great love and intimacy, but there'll also be times of desolation. There'll be times where things just look like they're wrecked from the top to the bottom, where you just don't understand exactly what's going on. But I can promise you this. Not everything you do every day is going to yield fruit today. This is not about fruit today. This is about a different mentality. This is about a different mindset that we have to understand. We have to wait on God. The truth of the matter is that fruit is coming, but we have to wait on God. We're looking at our situation and saying, what about now? And God has said, I can sustain you now in every season. When there is no fruit, it's not a lacking of a sustaining season. You need to live and not die in order to wait on your season to bear fruit. So you are being sustained when there is no fruit. You're being sustained when there's nothing that you have produced. You are being sustained by God because he's not dependent on your season in order to sustain you. There's not a season where God says, this is a season to take care of you. Every season is a season to take care of you, but every season is not a season for you to produce fruit. Everything that you said is not going to pan out right now. Everything that God told you he's going to do does not mean he's going to do it right now. And the maturity of the believer is allowing God to work out everything in its ordained course. And it's in a time that you may not immediately comprehend. We bear fruit. We bear fruit in seasons that will blow our minds. We bear fruit in times of famine. We bear fruit in times when it looks like this is not fruiting time. But God determines the time for fruit. God determines when you're going to need to bear fruit, when you are going to need to be vindicated, because your fruit vindicates you. You in famine look barren, but God is trying to tell you that you cannot be barren. The fact that it's not here yet does not mean the tree is dead. The fact that you don't see fruit right now does not mean the tree is useless. It simply means God is doing something that cannot be yet seen by man, but can be known by the tree. The righteous man is going to bear fruit, because fruit naturally comes from this tree, because it's planted by the rivers of water. It's an abiding life in Christ, where the source of your life is not dependent upon outside sources. Listen, we need this right now more than ever, because these seasons are established just like our fruit is. God establishes every season of your life, and he establishes the fruit in that season. It's established by God. There's nothing you can do. You can't rush the process. You can't put more water on it. You can't put more miracle grow. There's nothing you can do but wait on the Lord. And the believer who lives by grace and not by works is going to bear fruit. But it takes time. And the message that God is trying to give you today is that it's going to manifest eventually. Fruit has a season. And we sometimes get discouraged when we begin to walk in righteousness, and fruit is not immediately evident. We speak the things that we think we're supposed to speak. We say and do the things we think we're supposed to do, and we see no fruit. We don't see anything that seems to come from it. And what God is saying, wait on the Lord, wait on me. That we need to wait until God brings the fruit in that season, because I can tell you right now, there are no barren trees in God's orchard. There is absolutely no barren trees. You may not have fruit right now, but you are not barren. Your fruit may not have manifested yet, but know this, you are not a dead tree. There may be times of barrenness, but that does not make you barren. There are times when an apple tree or peach tree, you catch them in the right season and they look dead. They just look like spindly little pieces of wood that are sitting there, where sometimes, depending on the time, you don't know what kind of tree it is. It may not look like it's healthy, but there's a resurgence that comes. There's a reflourishing that comes. And there's an advantage that comes, because God has promised their leaf is not going to wither. It will never wither away. We're in this for the long haul. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. We're going through lots of things in this country right now. But God is saying, look at your leaf. You are not withering, because the economy is messed up, because we are divided more than ever. You are not going to wither. We're not a part of so much of the stuff that you see out there. We're trying to make ourselves a part. We're trying to get involved in things that are really, as you look at the believer, we've got bigger fish to fry. We've got real work to do that's been ordained before any of the problems that we see here now. Before immigration was an issue, we had a great commission to go out into the highways and to preach this gospel. Because the issue is not whether you're going to be kicked out of America. The issue is whether you're going to hear these words, well done, thou good and faithful servant, whether you'll enter into your joy. So this tree whose leaf will never wither doesn't wither, because we always get what we need from God. And this is not a place for the needy. We need to get that. Being a believer does not mean that I'm needy. We're not needy people. People who are needy are often blind to God's sustenance. They're blind to the fact that God is giving you, he's blessed you already. People who are needy forget that this is the day that the Lord has made, and we should rejoice and be glad in it. Needy people are always indicating that they're not getting what they need. But when you look at what God is talking about, there is a divine contentment that comes in any situation we find ourselves in. That's what Paul said. Listen, these brown, dead, withered leaves are signs of death. They're signs of barrenness. They're signs of nothingness. When you look at your ministry, when you look at your Christian walk, there should be no dead leaves. Because there looks like dead times does not mean that those dead times affect your life. You have a lively hope, a living hope, and your living hope it overrides any of the death in your environment. It may be dead, it may be withering, but God has promised something about you. He says, your leaf is not going to wither. The righteous man does not bear the signs of this world's death. It does not bear the signs of this world's dryness. Its leaves are green. Its leaves are alive. And God is expecting the believer in this day to come alive. This is a season for us to get up from where we are and to come alive, to know that we've come into the kingdom for a time such as this. We need to get excited about what God is doing, because he's promised, watch and see what I'm going to do. I'm going to sustain you. When the world is looking and saying that was one of the worst times ever, there's a generation that will look and say, but they were sustained. We look back at our grandmothers and our great grandfathers, and those times we say, well, how did they do it? And what did they do? I can tell you what right now, they didn't do anything but just trust in God. They didn't do anything but but stay where they were planted. God put them in a place, and there were times that were tough. God put them in a place, and there were times that they were ostracized. God put them in a place, and there were times where there was attempts to cut them down. But when the Lord has blessed you and protected you, it's impossible to destroy what God has made to live. It's impossible to kill what God has called alive. So when you begin to look at what's in your system, what's in your rooting system, you are surrounded right now by a great cloud of witnesses. And God is saying, this is your season. This is your season to just simply stand still and to see the salvation of the Lord. Watch and see that everything in your environment that's been working against your leaves is not working. Everything in your environment that's been working against your fruit, all the things that even come to your mind that are trying to tell you that you are not on track. You are not going to bear fruit. You should have already done it. If it was there, we would already see it. All of those lies that make you determine the season, that make that where you're looking at other people and you're saying, but look at their season and look at their fruit. You don't even know what is real fruit, because the fruit isn't brought forth by you. The fruit is produced by your tree, but there is the internal system that brings fruit that will also surprise you. The fruit comes and you didn't even know God is working on you. You thought that this was a bad time and this was a work time, that God was doing something in your mind. God was changing your attitude, and God is making you more dependent. Stand still. Like that tree is planted. It doesn't have a choice. But the human, you can actually try to shake out of your rooting system. But I want you to understand that God is saying, stay where you are. This is not a time to move, because you don't need to move. Moving isn't going to make you, you're not going to move into success by moving. You move into success by standing. And he's saying, stand and be planted. Allow your stuff. Stop fighting against the root system that's trying to bless you. Stop fighting against the stationary God that's holding you in place so that you will not run from your Goliath. God is calling you to stand still. And he says, whatever that man does shall prosper. And let me tell you what this is. This is a continual source of life, which turns into stability and uninterrupted contentment. People are looking around and like, what is joy? What's happiness? What do I need? Do I need more money? Do I need more things? Am I looking for a better car? Am I looking for a boyfriend, a husband, a wife, whatever? What makes me happy? Listen, let me tell you something. This happy man, this righteous man, what's in him, this prosperity that God is saying is not about money. It is not that this man has the golden touch, that whatever he touches seems to work out. Whatever she touches just turns into gold. No, it doesn't mean that they're going to be rich. It doesn't mean they're going to be comfortable. It means that no matter what type of wind blows, I am able to be content. And let me tell you something. There's nothing more powerful than being content. That God, I see your hand in my situation. If I make my bed in hell, you're there. God, I'm content wherever I am. This is not complacency. This is not giving up. This is not saying, I'm not trying to be better. I'm not trying to do the best. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has a knowledge of God's hand on your life in dry places. It is your knowledge that God is leading me beside the still waters, but he's also leading me through the valley of the shadow of death. And I fear no evil because you're with me. I was content when I was by the still waters. I was content when you would restore my soul. But guess what? The enemy thought I was going to crumble when things got dark, when I was in the valley of the shadow of death. But guess what prosperity is? Prosperity is uninterrupted contentment. that when I started out, knowing that the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I was content with this shepherd. I was content with the path that he put me on. I was content with the valley that he put me in. I was content with how he sustained me. But I found contentment in dark places. I found contentment where I could not see, where I had no control over where I was going, what was going to happen to me. I said his rod and his staff, they comfort me. I have uninterrupted contentment from verse number 1 in Psalm 23 to verse number 6. From the beginning to the end, there is contentment. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Uninterrupted contentment. This is not about wealth. This is not about earthly wealth. This is not about earthly comfort. This doesn't mean that God is saying, I'm telling you, when everything you do is going to prosper, that means that everybody's going to like you. That when everything you do is going to prosper, that means that everything's going to work out just perfectly for you. That means that people are not going to oppose you. That does not mean at all that that's going to happen. This is not La La Land, but this is the righteous man life that God says, I can bring something good and wonderful out of everything. I mean, how wonderful is it to know that all things, your mistakes, your issues, your quirks, your problems, your psychological issues, all those things, God said, I'm working them together for your good. That's an exciting thing that you aren't a part of. That tree is planted. You're not a part of the table that's set before you in the presence of your enemies. You're not a part of being blessed in the city and blessed in the field and how you got that way. You're not a part of God's protecting. You're not a part of turning your situation around. God says the king's heart is in my hand and I turn it however I will. Your blessing is not on you. Your safety is not on you. Your triumph is not on you. This is not the responsibility of the tree. The tree simply waits and stands still to see the salvation of the Lord. I knew you were going to save me. I knew you had called me a tree when I didn't look like a tree. I knew you were going to cause my leaves to not wither. And I knew that in the right time, I was going to bring forth fruit. There are people that are so disappointed in their lives right now. So disappointed because I just didn't do this. I just didn't do that. And God said, wait. There are people who look up and they're 66 and they begin to understand, God, this is the best time of my life. I thought that it was denied, and God said it was just delayed. The season was right. That wasn't the time. Your best time was not going to be when you were in high school. The best time was not going to be in your 20s. I've got a season of fruit where you're going to come together and come alive. That all your gifts are going to come together. That what looks like wasted time, what looks like I messed up, who's seen me here? I've got all these skills and all these attributes and nobody can see it. God, what is it for? Wait on the Lord. You're going to see it. So I want you to understand something. Don't throw your tools away. Don't throw your treasure chest away. Don't jettison it yet and give up and say, well, that time is past. I want you to understand something. You're serving the master of time. You're serving the master of time. And God is the one who determines when a time has come and when a time has passed. And I hear the Lord clearly saying, rise and shine, for your light has come. Because a tough situation is sometimes the time that God is saying, I'm going to do something inconceivable. I'm going to cause you to bear fruit in the winter. I'm going to blow man away by my glory. I'm going to show him just the kind of glorious God I am. Not by doing some light show. Not by changing nature in some way, making the river that flowed north to south now flow from south to north. No, I'm not doing any of that. I'm going to take a believer, somebody who just trusted me, that everybody is counted out. And I'm going to bring them to a place of fruiting in abundance in a season that nobody expected. If you had done it like you wanted to do it, it would be great, but it would not be marvelous. It'd have been good, but it would not be stunning. God wants to do something stunning in you. Now, at this time, this is when you want me to do it? God said, yeah. I mean, be ready to step into brand new things. Because tough times are here does not mean it's tough for God. Because we are in tough times on this earth does not mean heaven is handcuffed. And when God says, everything you do, you shall prosper. Even that you got to wait on. because I want you to know something. Sometimes the toughest times are the times when the bell is ringing. Where God is saying, that's what I waited for. That was the moment. It was at the moment that Pharaoh's heart was hardened that God says, I guarantee you I'm about to do something now that's going to get me glory, and he's going to thrust you out of Egypt with a mighty hand. They're going to cast you out of here. You've been doing everything you can to get out of here, to walk out of here. Now they're going to beg you to get up out of here. They're going to move you in there, and they're going to take the earrings of gold out of their ears and silver out. And they're going to take it out of their nose. And I want you to take those and put those garments that they're going to give you on the backs of your children. I want you to put those earrings in their ears. That's what they're going to give you. In this last moment, you're going to bear fruit. It took years for this people that were not a people to become a people. It took years for them to no longer be slaves. It took a long time. But at the moment where fruit was there, where Jehovah stepped in and said, I'm going to wrap my arms around my people, and they're going to see that they're my people, miracles started to happen. The whole earth began to move in a place of sustaining these people. Water came out of rocks. Wells sprung up that were not there before. Quail came and changed their course, their migratory course, and landed right there. Manna came from heaven. There was a pillar of a cloud and a pillar of fire. There were miracles in a time that looked like the worst time. We're in a desert, and God says, I'm in that desert with you. So I want you to know something. God, even in tough times, can bring something that you will prosper in. Get excited, because this is your moment. Rise and shine, for your light has come. Listen, I want you to receive that today. I want to bind up any fear that is in your life, and I want you to begin to look at yourself completely different. I want you to understand, God, I see the environment I'm in, and it's no mistake. I see where I'm living. I see things that are going on, and it's no mistake. I don't have to take my hands and put my hands on the wheel and redirect my life or even redirect my focus. But I'm going to stand still like this tree and let the roots do the work. I know I can't see how I'm going to drink, but I'm still here. Somehow you are sustaining me where there is no water, because you know where the water is. The children of Israel saw water come out of rocks. I'm going to do a new thing. God is going to sustain you in a new way. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. Listen, hold on to that. You're going to need that this week. God bless you. Have an awesome rest of your Sunday.